My family just loves to watch a show that stars a guy who is not an actual actor. His name is Caesar Milan, and you probably know who I'm talking about. Caesar is the dog whisperer. He is a dog psychologist. And as he would say, he rehabilitates dogs and he trains people. He's an expert in understanding the mind of a dog and how he can train owners to better interact with their dogs. On this show, he deals with super aggressive dogs, noisy dogs, dogs with bad attitudes, and owners who just don't have a clue on what to do to help their dogs be better dogs. One situation that he deals with that fascinates me is when a dog becomes aggressive over their food. If someone bothers a dog like this while they're eating, the dog becomes territorial and protective over the food and even their food bowl. And Caesar teaches that you should not allow a dog to even start to eat if they are showing signs of aggression toward their food. I saw one episode where he will put food into a food bowl of an aggressive, protective dog, and then he will kneel down and put himself between the dog and the food. He will not allow the dog to get to the food or even close to the food until the time is right, which means that the dog has become submissive. Eventually, through his training, the dog will patiently wait for Caesar to give the okay, a sign that says that it is now time to eat. And that time is only when the alpha, and in this case, Caesar, allows it. Caesar has waited for several minutes to declare that it's okay, leaving the dog to patiently sit and wait, submissively focused on the alpha, waiting for the sign that it's time to eat. And I find this incredibly amazing. There's a word in the Old Testament, a Hebrew word, that exemplifies this idea of waiting with anticipation. And it's the word hene. It's found in a few places in the Old Testament. Actually, it's found 843 times. And most of the time, like in the King James Version of the Bible, it's translated as the English word behold. If this word hene is being initiated, like if I'm making a statement, the translation is definitely closer to behold, or an exclamation maybe like, hey everyone, or listen up, or yo, basically to get someone's attention. But if hene is being used in a response to someone or something, it's translated more along the lines of an interjection, a response like yes, huh, or even, again, yo. In places like Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8, it's translated as the phrase, here am I. In Isaiah 6, Isaiah has been given the ability to see the unseen, to witness God's realm, and he's caught up in God's throne room, surrounded by strange creatures and beings all worshiping God. When God makes this statement, whom shall I send? Isaiah is quick to interject, here am I, hene. Like Isaiah, Abraham too used this word in response to God. Genesis 22 describes a very strange situation, and actually a very disturbing one. After years and years of Abraham and his wife Sarah not being able to have children, God finally fulfills his promise to them, and he gives them a son, Isaac. But oddly enough, God tells Abraham to take Isaac to a very specific place, build an altar, and then sacrifice his only son, Isaac, upon that very altar. Again, a very strange and disturbing request. Definitely to those of us reading this story in the 21st century, thousands of years later. But to Abraham, well, he kind of knew something that we didn't. He knew God had other plans, that God would never break his promise. So he took Isaac to this place and they set up an altar and he put Isaac upon it, ready to bring a knife down to end his own son's life. But he was patiently and submissively focused upon listening for God's voice. And when God finally called out to Abraham, Abraham's response was this same interjection, hene, here am I. And then in Exodus 3, we know of a guy named Moses. Everybody knows Moses. He made a new life for himself in a town called Midian. He married and had a family and worked as a shepherd for his father in law. He had left his old life raised in Egyptian royalty behind. But one day, a very famous day that I'm sure we probably all know pretty well, he was guiding the sheep through the wilderness and came upon a bush that was on fire, but it was not burning up. And, that got his attention. And then a voice, God's voice, called out to him. Well, what do you think was Moses' reply? Yes, Hene, here am I. An immediate interjection response. All three of these illustrations have one major thing in common: posture. The posture of all three of these guys was that of submission and availability. And actually, we see the same exact posture of the guys Jesus called to be his students. Like in Matthew 4, Matthew describes Peter and Andrew and James and John all in the middle of fishing, which was their day jobs, their careers. And Jesus called them to follow, and they simply dropped what they were doing. In responding, basically, their posture was, here am I, Hene. And in Matthew 9, Matthew describes himself, a tax collector, simply leaving his booth when Jesus calls. Basically, leaving his office with his computer still on, work files sitting on the desk, phone calls on hold. He immediately responds to Jesus, and he leaves it all behind. Here am I, Hene. This is the very same posture that is required for all of us to enter into this amazing partnership that God offers through Jesus. A posture of obedience, a submissive availability that says, I believe that you know more than I do, and that your way is better than mine. So, here am I, Hene. But a lot of times we tend to get this posture reversed. It's almost like we want to go and do something for God, and then we ask Him to come over and bless it. In that instance, we have assumed the role of the Alpha. We are expecting God to be submissive to us, that He should patiently wait for us to give the sign that it's time. Jesus constantly reiterates and emphasizes what has already been talked about in the Old Testament for centuries, a theme, a phrase actually, that flows throughout the whole narrative of the Bible. Proverbs 20 is just one of the chapters in the Bible that describes what a relationship with God is supposed to look like. And it uses this specific phrase in verse 12. And it says, ears that hear and eyes that see, the Lord has made them both. This idea, this phrase, is all over the Bible. The key of partnership with God is not founded upon us taking the role of the Alpha, but instead taking a submissive role, a deep focus of watching and waiting on the Alpha with attentive eyes and ears. So in Matthew 13, Jesus tells this famous story of a farmer sowing seed. He then has to explain the story to his students later on in private. The whole story centers around having eyes that can truly see and ears that can truly hear. What Jesus is trying to tell us all is that we need to put ourselves into a patient posture of submission, a laser focus, ready to see and hear what the Alpha is doing and saying at all times. A posture of waiting to simply respond, here am I, Hene.